So welcome to our Coach Me to Lead podcast. Today I'm talking to Sherry Jeffs. Is
Oh,
it Sherry or
cherry,
Jerry?
cherry,
Cherry.
cherry.
So I was
Like the
going to ask it
fruit.
up front. Yeah. Sherry, you are in the UK right now,
Yeah, that's where I am.
but you also work a lot from Spain.
Yeah, I lived over there for 20 years, so and now I'm kind of hopping back. That's good balance for
Right.
me.
Yeah. And so let's start talking a bit about your art, the work that you do, and like you said on your website, you're first an artist and then a coach. So let's talk about the art first.
Okay.
You you create art on various ways. And what is your latest? I know because I've read it, but other people who are listening to the show don't know. So what is the latest thing that art that you're creating?
Okay, so I create what are known as artist books, which there is an article on my website. What is an artist book? Because it doesn't actually have to be a book, but it should have book-like qualities. So covers or pages or a story, or it can have text. Quite often they have text. So it's a very specific genre, but it's also very wide in the sense that people interpret that in many different ways. So mine they're usually without words, and they're what are known as unique sculptural books. So each one has a story, I suppose, and they fold and unfold and tend to have a surprise inside, so you can't always know what's inside when you look at the cover.
And the story is just images. It's just like 3D kind of images. It's not a story that you read, but you have to make up your own story from the images that you see. That's how I translate it.
Right, yeah, I guess so. Yeah, I mean, I have a story unfolds for me as I make it. But yes, the way that someone interprets that is up to them, and that's part of the what I find fascinating about art in general. Really, is that what you see is not necessarily what the viewer sees, and that's so. They say that an artwork's not complete until someone else sees it because of that.
That's interesting. So, and if you just take that part when you create the art, how long does it take you to create, in general, such a book?
Um, Usually, well, now it's taking me about 6 months. At the beginning, it was taking me about a year. So I've speeded up. I'm now doing 2 year instead of one. And also I'm in investigating creating what they call multiples. So they'll or a kind of edition, but it will be different. It won't be something so three-dimensional. It will be more paper-based folding, so that I can make maybe 10. And then, so, really it's not the making that takes so long. Usually it's coming up with the idea. That's probably at least half of the process is developing the idea. So once I've developed the idea, if I can make 10, then obviously better than just one. But generally those things, as one, it's taken you 6 months, it will sell for more money, but one of 10 will sell for less money. But it's a balance, but it's also a good way to get more people to be able to purchase your work. So
And you said that it's the part of creating the idea, developing the idea. That's a large part of the whole process.
yeah.
And I think there is an interesting connection to make to the coaching that you do, because how do you make sure that I can imagine that maybe not, but I can imagine that that's at some point you want to create an artwork within a certain time frame. And then, so, at some point you have to start creating it, like you do. And then, so if you have the time where you start processing and creating the idea, how do you make sure that you work every day or so on your idea?
Yeah, that's That's the joy of habits, isn't it? That's where we're all at with Coach.Me. Um, I, th- I did 1 year. I did a make a piece of art every day thing. 365 days of art, and that was this was pre-artist books, but it was such a revelation for me because I created such a volume of work that I had never, I had never been someone who was prolific. So it was like I just didn't know it was even possible to make that much work in that time. And that taught me just so much about regularity and what that means for your creative practice, because how your ideas just flow a lot faster when you're working regularly, and how you get over that perfectionism because there's always another day. It's not like it has to be right today because there's tomorrow and there's something else you're going to do tomorrow. And so that was a huge experience for me. And I think when I, because I was one of the first, I'm quite one of the first coaches on Coach.Me. So when I got this, I used to use the app Lift, and when I got an email from then CEO Tony Stubblevine to say, do you want to become a coach? It was like the philosophy of habit building was just so, I was like, yes, this is really something that I believe in. Because I think previous to that, I had a lot of creative blocks, and I really thought that you probably had to go through sort of really deep mental things to change that. But I think what habits do is they it's not to say that you don't have to address those deeper things, but I think habits really circumvent the need to do it now and give you the ability to start creating something straight away and working on your creativity at the same time without, like saying, okay, I'm going to do 5 years of therapy and then I'll be ready, So, yeah, I'm a bit of a habit nerd, definitely.
I think one person that really showed me the strength of habit in creative work was Casey Neistat. And he's a what they call a YouTuber, and he's a filmmaker first, I would say, then a YouTuber. But he would make movies, some stuff. But suddenly he figured, so what if I just started making a movie every day? So, but just in video, and just use YouTube as a platform to publish. And the rhythm and the discipline, and also the enormous amount of energy and time that he used to create that part of creativity and art every day, it was just amazing. So I think he published 3 years straight every day, even on the weekend. So
wow, yeah,
every day a new video. And I think what he tells sometimes in videos when he talks about the process is how his life changed, but just looking at the day from the beginning to the end of creating art, right? So at the end of the day, I have to push publish. And I think that's probably the same thing that you were describing. At the end of the day, you want to have a finished piece of artwork, whatever it looks like. But you stopped at the year, so why not continue?
Yeah, interesting, because that was quite a learning curve as well, because after the year I did stop, and I stopped dead, and I lost the habit. And so when people say, how long does it take to create a habit? And they say, oh, it's 30 days, isn't it? And I was like, yeah, until you fall off the wagon, and then, so there is no, there is no time scale for that. It could be 30 days, it could be 365 days, it could be 3 years. But sooner or later, you will fall off the wagon. I don't think, there are, people who claim that they never don't do something, but, I'm skeptical personally. But it's not a problem, because at the end of the day, what you do is you build up those skills that allow you to get back on the horse. And, quoting Tony again, but I really like his analogy of, like, it's all just training, everything is just training. It's just getting stronger. And each time you you fall off, then you get better at getting back on again. So that's what I really learned after the 365 days. So maybe like 365 days was an achievement, but perhaps the most important bit was actually falling off at the end of that, and then it's going, okay, so how do I get back on? Why I didn't want to do it again? Yeah, I mean, creating something every day is interesting, ultimately, because I like to go deeper into the works. So my habit is to create every day, but to be working on a project or several projects, not creating a new thing every day.
I've learned to listen to my questions, right? So okay, I'm going to ask you the question, and if it's too direct, just let me know. Isn't that like an excuse?
What? I don't quite
Of
understand the question.
not creating everything, and not publishing the creation every day, to have a final thing every day.
No,
Okay.
because if you want to write War and Peace, you can't publish it today. If you want to, it's like, and I think almost the opposite, that in some sense the culture that we live in now is so oriented towards quick results that people are really shocked at how long it takes, for example, to write a novel. I coach a lot of writers. I'm not a novelist at all, but for me, it's very analogous to the kind of work that I make. So, and I do write nonfiction. So I think people are very shocked at how long it's actually going to take, and how many drafts, and that's that's a complete another skill, because what you would have to learn then is endurance. It's like the difference between a short sprint and a marathon. So, yeah.
Yeah, good point. And when you just mentioned before of falling off in the end, I also remember the quote that I heard from Gwen. She was saying that, so if you don't do it one day, that's okay. But if you don't do it twice a day, you're creating a new habit.
True. Yeah. Yeah. But I suppose, my coaching style is forgiving. And I think that most creatives are extremely hard on themselves. They turn up saying, I procrastinate, and I don't do this, and and they have only bad things to say about themselves. And I think what they don't need is anyone else telling, sort of saying yes to that. What they need usually is the opposite, and saying, no, hey, that's normal, we all do it, and you just need to start again tomorrow. And that, for me, is how I coach. And I've seen a lot of success with that, because I don't want people to beat themselves up.
Yeah, I think sometimes I get clients, entrepreneurs. They want to become more efficient, more efficient in general, and want to learn more about the habits. But if I look at how many work they already do, I don't understand why they come to me in the first place, because they're just doing already so much work. So why do you want to become more efficient and do even more? So, and then making the connection, what you just said, is that the world is just looking for quick results. I think the whole thing, what you just mentioned, is of like finding the peace in creating something over like maybe a year, right? To develop something beautiful that takes a year to really develop and ripen and become more beautiful. I think that is a skill in itself.
Sure. Because you have to build the patience, and, as we said, the stamina, and also the self-belief, that you will finish it, because that's, I think, self-trust is something that I really find that I'm talking more and more to my clients about. That seems to be almost the thing that is the most important thing to learn. And almost like we don't have it, because we think there's a right way to do things, and if you don't do it this way, then it's not, it's not valid. And so that ability to trust yourself and say, yeah, okay, I know I'll show up. Maybe I don't show up 7 out of 7, but 5 out of 7 will get the job done as long as I'm productive in that time. And that's another thing I think as well is time. That we all know that time is elastic according to what you're doing. When you're deeply engrossed in something, your concentration is so good you can really get a lot done in an incredibly short amount of time. When you're not focused, you could spend 5 hours and get nothing done. So it's not about measuring time. And I suppose that's another approach. I don't really encourage people to measure time. I encourage them to measure results, getting things done.
I didn't know we were so alike on these ideas. Because when I talk to my clients, and I have entrepreneurs as clients in general. So when we talk about getting 3 goals done, right? So 3 goals is like a magic number to me, and 3 goals a day. If you do 3 goals a day, you get like, what is it again? 100. What is it? 3 goals a day. That is.
It's going to be over 1,000 a year, isn't it? So
yeah. That's a lot of work that you get done. If you just stick to the 3 goals, then there's so much work in the end you will have done, which you would have done anyway if you were just having like a huge to-do list and you don't do any of those things, right? So, yeah, I like the things that you're describing here. And
do you think that it's can I ask you a question?
Of course.
Do you think it's that as Europeans we have a different attitude slightly, that I think that North America feels more intense about getting things done and time and yeah, people get up incredibly early to fit in that extra thing like you were talking about. I've had those clients that turn up and say, yeah, I want to do this, and I'm like, when? It's like, when are you going to do that? Because to do that, you've got to stop doing something else. There are no more hours in your day to do another thing. So I don't know whether in Europe we don't have quite the same approach. I don't know. We're a little bit more relaxed, maybe.
I think you're correct. I think when I talk with other coaches from the team from Coachdotme and we talk about clients, I think it is very different, the way that we look at time, time well spent, time to relax, to think, to all these, instead of just trying to fit everything in, right? Okay, now I need to meditate. Now I need to do this. Now I need to do this. I think we are just more. And so if we, I start my morning. I'm an early bird. I can't help it. So there's nothing great about it. It's just how my system works. Sure. And I start my day with reading. When I'm not well focused, I start on the phone. But in general, I start reading in the book. And then after I take a walk for like 45 minutes or so. Then I start going to my office and start doing the actual, between quotes, work. Because I see the reading as a part of my work as well, but it's just different, right? So it's for relax. I do it in a different seat. I do it downstairs. I have a cup of tea next to it. So instead of looking, I need to read from 6 to 7. Yeah, no, that's not. I think that's a different attitude here in Europe than it is in the US, but also in the Far East as well. I've spoken to people in India and Dubai and so on, and they have a different attitude about it too.
I think it's quite interesting what you said about reading. That's part of your work. That's another thing that for creative practice is something that I'm kind of constantly trying to get people to understand, that it's not just about production. You can't produce without doing the other things as well. What Julia Cameron calls filling the well. If you don't take in, you can't put out. It's like you try making coffee in the morning. If you don't pour water in the machine, it just goes out of water. Sorry, no coffee. So we're that simple. We need things to go in. Like, so if for an artist, they need to go to exhibitions or look at other people's work, or maybe it's not. Maybe it's cross pollination. Like I love reading. I love theatre, and I'll get stimulation from different things. Doesn't have to be, I don't need to look at artist books to get stimulated about my art. But that sense of practice is a much bigger thing than just production. How many words did I write today is really, really important, because our practice can be cyclical as well. It can go through phases. So like when I'm saying to you, well, it takes me maybe 50% of my time of creating a book is developing the idea. That will be some research, coming back, brainstorming, then maybe go back and do some more research, and that process, understanding your own process, what does it take for me to create something, is really, really important. So
I'm curious, is like conversation and meeting with other people, like having talks, having deep conversations, is that part of your process too?
Maybe not so much with artwork. I think it is absolutely definitely with the other part of my life, which is marketing my business. Sometimes talking to other artists. Yes, at the moment I'm in a collaboration with some other artists, and it is really, really fulfilling. So that is a part of it, but it's not a huge part of it. But whereas for marketing and things like that, where I feel like I've always got to learn new things and get new ideas, then that's hugely important to me, to talk to other people. Definitely.
You sell your coaching. I'm gonna come back to it in a bit. I'm gonna show you what you do, but also you sell like products on your website, like a course or an ebook or stuff like that. How important is that for you to not just sell it, but just to create and to have this ready for other people who come to you?
Yeah, I think certainly ebooks are something that have been important, because I think, I've always blogged since I was, since blogging was a thing, and I've had loads of different websites, and the latest one has very few articles on it, partly because I transferred it to a new host, but also because I just felt like a lot of the time, most of the time, people just visit the same articles, and you can have hundreds of articles on there, but no one really sees them. So, but an article can only tell you so much, and then there's maybe another level of what people need to know, which isn't necessarily, 6 months of coaching, but it is like an extra level. So an ebook for me is that next level where people can, go a bit deeper into the subject and learn a bit more.
Yeah, and how I also see it is because I blog, I've written a lot of posts as well, and I started in 2005. So also it was not the beginning, but it was early.
Pretty much.
Yeah. And the thing was that when you talk to clients, and often they didn't see your posts and you kind of like expect that they saw it somewhere because you've been posting it everywhere and sharing it everywhere. And then you think, so now people will know, but you talk to clients and they haven't read it. So by creating these books and then you can sell them, but also I can just hand them out because I also print some of those books. And when I see my clients, I can give it to them. So then they have like my best post in a book. And I think that's also a great way to connect and to stay connected and to share ideas, and also in a way that usually, especially entrepreneurs they prefer like reading like a short book than just going to a website every week to check if there's a new post. Yeah, I think it's a great idea to do this. Is like the marketing part also a part of your coaching that you do with your clients?
Yeah, it is. Yeah. In fact, it's probably the part that I'm most excited about in a way, because I've done habit coaching for so long, and it's good, and I really like to see people empowered to get their creative practice off the ground. But I also find it really exciting when people are going to another level and they're looking to market their work, and I find that a very exciting journey to take with a client as well.
What is in general the first thing that you do with your clients?
In terms of marketing?
No, no.
In terms
when
of,
you start.
in terms of, okay. Usually I think it's always habit, checking up on where they are with their habits, really, because that is whatever you're going to do, whether it's, just start your creative practice or write a novel or market, a creative business. You have to have habits around that if you're going to succeed, because you've got to show up and do it regularly. So yeah, I think the first thing is always, well, what are you actually doing at the moment, and how regular is it, and how does it feel? What about you?
Well, I was just thinking about this part because what I see is when I have, I'm coming to an answer, but I want to know first one thing more from you is,
Okay.
if you because I use the combination of like the chat based and calls, right? Depending on what we set up, it's like weekly or bi-weekly. That's the rhythm right now. And I saw on your website that you do similar things. You also use calls and the chat. How effective do you feel is the chat when you start with someone trying to build up like this habit?
I think it's super effective because it's that daily connection. I mean, I check in, I'm not being being a European, I check in weekdays only, but that 5 days of having to say yes I did it or no I didn't is so helpful for people, just because it makes them own where they're up to, really, and and obviously I'm there to give them that encouragement when they're going, oh, I didn't do it. It's like, okay, it's okay, tomorrow is another day. And so yeah, I think it's super important. That I really love that text aspect to it. And the other aspect for me as well with that is that a lot of creative people are very shy when it comes to admitting that things are not going well. I've had clients that are quite like well placed in their industry, and they don't always want to kind of be public at the beginning about who they are and what they're doing. So text is a bit more anonymous, and then they normally come around to calls after that, but at the beginning it's kind of feels very safe for people, I think, less exposing.
Yeah, and I feel, and it probably has also to do with the way that I use the chat base and the check-ins and so on. But I feel that having the calls with these people is more effective in the beginning, especially than the check-ins. For me, the call is like the foundation, and then the check-ins are like a an extra layer. Because in the beginning, in general, it's sometimes very difficult for me to get them to check in every day.
Right.
Asking questions every day for, okay, so what's going on now? And then they don't reply at all because they're just very busy with the work, and stuff is going on, and they're doing their daily things, and yeah,
Sure.
I don't know how I can improve that. So that's something I can find out and learn from other people like yourself. How can I do this better? But that's
No, but it depends on the client, doesn't it? I mean, that's the most important thing, is to find out what they need,
Yeah.
And sometimes people start with one thing and then they switch to another, and sometimes it goes, they start with just text and then they add in calls, or they start with just calls and they add in text, and it depends on what they need, or sometimes they just drop down to text after they've done lots of calls, because kind of it's mostly established, but they just a sort of top up, they just need to know that I'm still keeping an eye on them.
Yeah.
So it really depends on what the client needs, and that's why we offer both.
Yeah. And you have been on the con-chairs. By the way, I'm just remembering, did I now answer your question, or am I still...
I forgot what the question was.
Okay, so let's continue then.
Oh yes, what do you start with? What's the first thing you do with your clients? That was what
right. I always start with a call. There's not a lot of people who don't want to start with a call. because I think the most important thing that I need to learn in the first call is, okay, what is your goal? What do you want to accomplish in your business? And then that's the information that I need to see, okay, what is like the 3 most important goals that you want to accomplish, like this month, this week, and then today. Otherwise, it's going to be very difficult to help them to accomplish 3 goals every day if I don't know which direction they are going.
Yeah.
So the first goal is always about, so what is the goals, the long-term goals that you want to accomplish? And then let's see, what are you doing today that doesn't contribute to that? And what can we do that will contribute to that? So that's the first thing that I do in general.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think that when I'm working more with the business side with a client, then generally we do start with a call.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yes. And so you were the concierge person at Coachdotme. What did you learn there? What was the most important thing that you helped people with, the coaches?
I think what was the most important thing I learned and what did I help them with is perhaps not quite the same thing. Mm-hmm. I think probably the most important thing I learned was that that writing a good profile page is the hardest but the most important thing that you can possibly do, and that needs constant revisiting as well, as you evolve as a coach as well. And also that as a coach, what do? You need to ask questions, and very much I think the mistake that most people make, I'm sure I made the same mistake as well, is that when we write about ourselves, we forget that what we still need to be doing is addressing what the client's needs are. It's not our profile page really isn't about us. It's not the bit at the top that says I'm this, but when you start writing a package description, it really has to be about the client's problems and needs and how you can help them solve it. And I think that was what I really learned a lot about kind of marketing writing, just looking at how people did it and thinking, no, that's not going to work, going to have to go over that again. And it really brought it home to me that I was doing the same thing, that I wasn't focusing enough on what the client was looking for. So so that's probably what I most helped people with as well.
I think it's interesting because what I've learned also in that part, because I've been involved with marketing since I started blogging, and even before that, I was doing marketing when I was an employee. And how difficult it sometimes is to do it right, or not right, but to do it yourself. And it's so easy to look at other people, how they can improve what you just read there, right? So or what you just see.
Yeah. It's great when you get to, to look at sort of 300 people doing that. You learn a lot about how you don't do it right as well. You really learn a lot about the right way to do it. It's like a sort of intensive course in how to not to do it, or, but it is really hard because we know, this is not something we learn at school. Nobody gives us lessons in this stuff. So, it's not surprising when someone says, write about this package, you think, oh yeah, what I need to say is, this is what we do and that, but you forget that you really need to start off with grabbing the person and saying, okay, I get what your problem is, and it's this, and that's the hardest thing really, is really getting a grasp of what your client's problem is, and putting it in words that they recognize themselves.
Yeah, interesting. I like the work you do. So let's see. I'm just gonna show people your profile, and I have to go to another screen to scroll. So you have a couple of packages here on your profile page. Actually, you have quite a few.
Yeah, probably. I keep trying to take them off, but then
So, but I think this is an interesting point too. If you are a coach like me on Coachdotme, and I've done like this is number 19, but I've talked to a number of coaches and I've showed their profiles, and every time there's a difference, right? Somebody has a lot of packages and the other one just has like 2 or 1 even. What do you think is because you have now for some time had like a number of packages on it, does it help for people to find you, to start something with you? Because you have, about writing, the creative journey, the marketing of your work. So there's people come to you with different needs, questions.
Yeah, I think that the reason that I could quite easily probably leave most of the packages off, those ones that you're looking at now, but what's helpful about having them there is people know there's an onward journey, so they can do something like finish a creative project and then they can say, okay, now I've done that, I know that the coach is able to take me on to the next stage, rather than it only having habits. I mean, I do believe that Coach Me is predominantly about habit-based coaching, but it's helpful for people to see what an onward journey might look like. And the reason I have, as I said, the writing ones is, I've always had a lot of clients writing in the writing habits, and interestingly, quite a few musicians as well who've come through that description, writing, because they're writing songs or writing music. So, it's important. I get more writing. There are proportionately more people looking to write than there are looking to make art on Coach Me. So it's important to have those on there. And yeah, they definitely do find me through those titles.
I think that the way that I see it, and it's of course just my opinion, is that when you show these packages, multiple packages, it also gives potential clients the idea that there is more, like you just mentioned, there's more behind just the first package, and that there is a foundation in the work that you do with what you could do with them, right? So it's not just you start something and then you don't know what to do, right? So, and I think that's an advantage if you have. I think it's the same if you like give a presentation and you don't offer anything at the end. People will just go like, so now what? What I do now, right? So I think that's the same thing when you start like create like every day. So okay, once you're in the habit, so what will I do then? Oh, she got this package, and I have to scroll to, for example, make your work stand out in the marketplace, which of course is, if you're an artist, is an important part of if you want to make a living from your art, is of your life. So I think it's really advantage to have this. But sometimes I also go like, oh, maybe it's better to just have one and be really precise and have a niche. And so it goes.
Well,
sometimes.
I mean, I do obviously have a niche. It's like there's I'm not,
clear.
I'm not
Clearly.
coaching sort of jogging or something as well.
No.
But I think that most people predominantly don't look at all your packages. Most people on Coach Me come via searching a specific habit, find that there's a coach for that habit, and then look at your profile. So I don't really think it matters that much, to be honest.
No, I have the same thoughts. I'm not sure if it's correct, but I have the same thoughts. So let's see if I can help people when they want to go to your page. Here you have your profile. If you scan the link, then it's in the video, so people can just on a mobile phone scan the link, and we'll just directly to your profile on Coachdotme. At the bottom, you can also see it's Coachdotme/grow wings or /grow wings. And on your website, there is a story about why these wings are so important to you. I will not talk about, but people should read it there because it's a beautiful story. There's one thing that I'm still curious about. It's been in the back of my head all through our conversation. You talked about this process, psychological thing of finding your work or finding your art, maybe even. And you talk about on your website about how long it took before you really start creating art. Why was that so difficult?
Well, let's just rewind that slightly. I did go to art school, and I worked as a graphic designer. So but I had not a very good experience at art school, definitely. Now, I think now that we see the world has opened up and we look at, the sort of Me Too and all of this sort of thing, I can see how much bullying was really going on. And it was quite a toxic environment. So, yeah, it didn't do a lot for my self-confidence, let's say.
That's sad.
Yeah, but I'm certainly not the only one. And in fact, many of my clients have had that experience, and quite recently as well. It's not like it's gone away. So I think those sort of things are what undermines our own relationship, our own trust, self-trust, really. And that's probably a lot of what people will be covering when they work with me.
How did you get over that?
I like you, I do a lot of reading, and I started to read a lot of. I started with The Artist's Way. It was a bit synchronistic because I'd been, after graphic design, when I moved to Spain, I started making jewelry, and that's what I did for quite a long time. And then I got a repetitive strain injury in my arm. And that was just around my 40th birthday. And I was thinking, this cannot go on. It's one of those pivotal moments and you think it's time for a change. I've got to do something different. And I went home to the UK to visit my mum, and I went to bookshop and I stumbled across The Artist's Way, and that was definitely very pivotal. So I worked all the way through that, and that gave me a lot of insights into things that were going on in my head. And then I think I just I started to realize that I could make work that would help me understand my own blocks. It was almost like the work itself could tell me what was wrong if I was open to understanding. So it's kind of an intuitive process, and I think that's a process I still use. So my work is very intuitive, and it comes from just situations in my life or in the world that I'm trying to figure out, and I figure it out in this visual way, and at the end I understand something about the situation that I didn't understand at the beginning. So that's how I got over it. That and 365 days. And
So happy I asked the question. Yeah, it tells something about why you did this and why you're doing things now and the process. And I think it's really important to understand in general. I have one more question, I think, before we close it off, is like you, I do the same thing. I sell my packages on my own website, not just all packages, but a couple of packages on my own website, and I sell packages on Coachdotme. But for me, it is because I'm in I do it in Dutch, right? So
Right.
on my own website is in Dutch, and so I sell the packages on my own website in Dutch, and it uses the Dutch invoice system and everything. So that's why I do it there. And everything outside the Netherlands, I just direct them to Coach.me. But you do it on your own website. You use Podia for that on selling it in the products, and then you do it also on Coach.me. When do you direct people from your website to Coach.me, or how do you tackle that part?
Well, like you,
because I'm asking this because I think more people are struggling with this idea. When do I do it on my own website, or when do I use Coach.me for this?
Yeah. Coach.me came first. So, and I feel a lot of loyalty to Coach.me because it that's how I learned to become a coach. And, I think text coaching is a tremendous thing that allows people who would never be able to afford a coach to experience coaching. So I'm very much always want to support that. Like you, being based in a non-dollar based country, It's not always good to have my money to get paid in dollars. Obviously, it fluctuates quite a lot. So I need part of my business to be paid in pounds sterling, because that, it it doesn't change. I don't have to exchange it from one currency into another. Sometimes it can be an advantage that's in dollars, but right now it's not. Right now my Coachdotme money's sitting in my bank account, and I'm going, okay, well, I'll just leave it another month, because it's just, the exchange rate is really not favorable to exchange it. So it's practical, really, to have more than one. Plus, yeah, one of the first things I ever learned when I went to doing a business startup course many years ago was, don't have all your eggs in one basket. So, my own website is my own website, and no one can take that away from me, no matter what happens. So, that's important as well.
100%. I agree with that 100%. Sherry, for the people who are watching later or just tuned in later, this video and audio will be published on the blog.Coachdotme by Monday, and we will be back with another episode next Friday, same time, same place, so 9 a.m. Central or 4 p.m. Central European time. I thank you very much for this lovely conversation, Sherry, because I learned a lot and I enjoyed to learn what you just shared. So it was very interesting. Thank you very much.
And thank you, Anna. It was really lovely conversation. Yeah, really nice.